I'm UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich.
I'm naturopath Doc Will Spencer.
I'm mindset expert Nicholas Spone. If you want to detoxify your cells, remineralize your body, and live up to your true health potential, you've come to the right place.
We are the Cell Saviors.
So this is a video, Pat, you brought up earlier, and it's a little bit of a paradigm shift. So in this video, we're going to talk about the term disease, and I want to know both of your opinions on, I guess, diseases in general.
Well, that concept to me, it dawned on me, I don't even know how many years ago it was, where I thought to myself, wait a minute, they're blaming the human for just going sideways genetically. In the questioning, I would listen, and I thought about it, and it said, is there a history of heart disease or cancer in your family? Mom's side, dad's side, mental illness, this, that, right? And I thought, well, what's causing, because I was at the time, back in the 90s even, teaching children, and all of a sudden this thing called autism was popping up in children that were being brought to me. And I was asking parents, what was causing it? What are the doctors saying? What do they know? And it was, the parents are like, the doctors don't know. They just don't know. And I would go, well, what are the doctors doing for your child? And they're saying they're on medication. Really? Well, what's the name of the medication? Give me the name of the medication. Then I would go research the medication and go, you're a 5-year-old on meth, right? This was in the early 90s, mind you. And into the mid 90s. And I saw the nightmare coming at that point, how severe this was going to be. Now we've gone from that, mind you, to autism clinics on main drags in every town in the Midwest now all of a sudden. And they just started really popping up in the last year or two for the most part, at least from what I'd noticed. So they've turned this environmental, what's being caused by the environment, whether it's the metals and synthetics from vaccines, from food, from water, from all the environmental toxins that are ending up in these children. It's causing them to go sideways in many different ways. They're blaming the child. They're blaming the child and the genetics of the human instead of the environments. So that's
as one specific example.
They give a name to the symptoms.
To the symptoms.
Right. So that's being caused by the environment instead of recognizing the environment and the solution for it, which they always, you hear people constantly say there's no money in the cure, right? There's no money in the cure. I don't look at it as cures. We're not curing anything. We're just pulling the environment out, the bad parts of the environment out, and putting the good parts of the environment in. If we're addressing the problem that is the environment that's causing the problem, I guess, as we know.
So environmental toxins, and you said putting the right environment in would be the nutrients and minerals that should be in the environment that aren't. And so it's the balance of eliminating the toxins and putting back in, feeding the body with the proper minerals. And from that framework of getting out the toxicity and getting in the right ingredients and raw materials, what is disease then? What happens to the symptoms? How do we think about, is that?
Well, it is a disease, is a collection of symptoms that they have a name for, so then they can put on the form with a code to get paid.
And create the pill to address it, right? Which is just generating more money off of patents and things like that. The United States government's entire economy, for the most part, is run off the patents on synthetic chemicals for either agriculture, for medicines, that's our entire economy. I mean, our largest GDP is healthcare at $4 trillion a year and growing. That's terrifying. That is and so for anybody out there that believes in the disease concept, the germ theory concept, and that human genetics are just going sideways on their own and not addressing the environmental toxins that are causing the damages, it is, to me, it's the data is telling you that you've been wrong for decades. We continue to go into the gutter. And I don't know how, for the statistic folks out there, one would look at the statistics for the analytical side of things, not the emotional side, the appealing to the emotions, but the true hard facts tell me that the allopathic world is not solving the problem. They're exacerbating it.
Sure doesn't seem like we're moving in the right direction.
Not from my observation.
So here's a question that just came to me, I guess, is do any of the big pharma prescription drugs, synthetic drugs, vaccines even, do any of them eliminate toxins from the body and or put back in minerals in the proper form that are missing? Do either of those two things?
No, just the opposite.
There are pharmaceutical products that claim to have chelation properties, which that may be true. I have not, certainly I don't experiment with those things, so I don't know. But I will say this, that I've not seen anything chelate more quickly and more thoroughly than natural existing antioxidant substances, right?
Right.
It's just, how do you beat your creator at the game that he runs and created to begin with, right? That's what these folks are doing, is creating counterfeit substances. In my humble opinion, I think it's pretty obvious that the solutions are not happening. The numbers are exploding in terms of what they call disease, right?
So let's talk about, some examples. So I remember in middle school, a historic example was scurvy, and all the sailors would get scurvy, and that was really just a vitamin C deficiency, right?
Yeah, Krebs cycle problem because of malnutrition.
Because of malnutrition. So it wasn't really this communicable disease once they figured out.
But they called it scurvy.
It was right. They're calling this the symptoms of malnutrition a disease of the scurvy. Yeah. So that's gone, right? Like scurvy's not a thing anymore. And they developed
limeys now.
Wait, what?
Limeys.
What's that?
They used lines on the
correct.
ship,
Yes,
in the diet to replace the missing vitamin C,
right?
Those elements, and then the scurvy went away because they were putting the nutritional element in that was missing, that was causing scurvy.
Right. Okay, so I guess even I'm just kind of shooting from there. Maybe some Alzheimer, dementia. Is this just toxic buildup in the brain and malnutrition? Same thing?
Mostly.
Fascinating.
But so that's the thing, is that I don't even like using the names that they've given it, because it's even the mere mention of the names that they've come up with gives any kind of credence to what they talk about, right? I detest this so severely because I've seen so many children suffer, because I loved working with children. When I see sick children and I see them being brought into, and parents who are scared, who are uneducated, who don't understand and haven't spent a lot of time, like Will and I have, for instance, from the time we were children suffering ourselves, and so people will say, well, what do you know about health? You were a professional fighter and a coach. What could you possibly know about, and I sit there and I don't want to go through the story over and over and over and say, when you spend your entire childhood sick, and scared and just feeling inferior, right? Not able to perform the way you want and do the things you want to enjoy. And you free yourself from that and then continue for 38 years researching, right? That you realize there's so many solutions, and you're so passionate about it because you want to see children get well and people get well, that you actually do know what you're talking about, right?
Well, you didn't get to be a world champion by just guessing at how martial arts went. You studied and researched and became the best in the world.
When you see a man on top of a mountain, he did not fall there.
Right. And so I think that pattern you have then brought into understanding these concepts.
100%. Yeah. When I want solutions, I want to win. I'm going to find solutions, right?
Yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So autoimmune diseases, is this just toxicity and malnutrition?
Autoimmune, yes, but it's a lot deeper than that. The autoimmune, like, just look at the name. It's the body attacking itself for some reason. And usually it's attacking itself because there's an enemy inside, or there's something detrimental or toxic inside that the body's trying to cure, fix. I don't like the word cure, but fix, chelate, get it out. And it just happens to be everywhere.
triggers or signals that are prompting the body to have an immune response to something.
Yes, it's internally and it's a systemic problem generally. So they call it autoimmune.
Yes.
So it would fall in toxicity and malnutrition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think there may be an aspect of mental, emotional. There's all frameworks that are within some of these, but right now we're focused on, that's a whole other discussion, right?
Yeah.
But right now, so toxicity and malnutrition. What about things like flu viruses, COVID, the bubonic plague, some what are infectious communicable diseases? Are those the same thing?
I notice patterns, and I've got to jump in on this because in my very early 20s, I sat there watching the news and I said, I'm noticing a pattern here. I'm noticing a pattern with the flu every year. And it's the same thing every year. And look, I don't blame people for not picking up on it. They've been busy with their lives. I just happen to be tuning into my health because I recently solved my respiratory illness. So it was always coming up on flu season. Remember to get your vaccine. Remember to get your flu shot. Get your flu shot. Get your flu shot. Over and over and over, day after day. Right? Constant marketing for it, and then everybody run out, line up, get their flu shots. And then after flu season, it was like, well, scientists miscalculated again. They put 5 different, past flu strains into the vaccines, and well, it wasn't, to be had. And sorry, the numbers were incredibly large for flu season this year. 78 years of flu vaccines, and flu just keeps happening. Of course, except the outbreak of COVID,
That it just completely vanished. We cured the flu.
So the fact that people are still lining their children up for these shots and having them get these shots still to this day, after what has taken place, I don't know what's going to wake them up. I really don't know what's going to. Now, of course, granted, a lot have, but
and if anything, it's adding a toxic load that they have to get rid of. And I know my family, most extended family, for the most part, doesn't do that. But the ones that do, they're always like, oh, my little child got the flu vaccine and they're feeling under the weather.
What did you wait?
What do we mean? Like, the whole point was to avoid that. Like, what? I don't understand. And it's just the framework is off. So this framework, I'm going to summarize it, and then you guys can add in any final thoughts. But if the body doesn't have the nutrients in the proper form that it needs, you're going to have malnutrition. And if you have toxins in your system, those are really the two things. You got to get the toxins out. You got to have the raw materials, which are the minerals, essential fatty acids, electrolytes, in the proper form that your body can utilize to be healthy.
And to help that, of course, as we talked about, helps push the toxins out.
Right. And we talk about that in several other videos. And any dis-ease is really just a cluster of symptoms around toxicity or a lack of one or more nutrients.
The genetic expression on how those particular toxins and lack of nutrients affect your specific genetics, whether it's a digestive issue in me or a respiratory issue in you, or arthritis in him, what they deem, joint pain, or issues, infections in him. It's how it expresses itself in each individual, the variations of it, right?
So this reminds me of another thing that we've kind of talked about before, but I want to touch on is genetics, like MTHR gene. Well, I'm not well because I have a genetic issue. We didn't mention, how does genetics fit into malnutrition and toxicity?
Your genetics will express based on your level of health, depending on your nutrients that are in. Because if you're missing certain elements, certain genes will or will not express. I could talk about the MTHR quite thoroughly because I've monitored the gene expressions well for 15 years. And MTHR is always there with malnutrition, and it's always there with a fairly heavy parasite load and fungal load. And there's very low immune function. So when you correct the immune function, you correct the malnutrition, and you start knocking the infection load down, that gene will eventually stop expressing and it'll go away. I've seen it time and time again.
I'm getting goosebumps from that specific point. And NTHR or MTF or whatever it is, that's one example.
Just one.
And I know a lot of people talk about that a lot. That's their excuse for not detoxing properly. That's their excuse for having to use binders.
Well, that's real though. It was their excuse.
Right.
But it doesn't work right when that gene is expressed.
But it's the symptom, right? Of malnutrition and toxicities.
Or a sign.
Sure. And so, earlier you were talking about, did your parents have these issues and genetic, they blame genetics for passing down these diseases, but also most family members get exposed to the same toxins,
Drinking the same water,
and
eating
eat the same diet.
Yeah.
So their genes are expressing the same way,
Right.
and they're experiencing the same toxicity and the same malnutrition.
Well, the genetic expression, like we're talking about, is when people go, yeah, but how can you explain people being born with it, with this genetic, illness? There's a incurable genetic issue, right? Or Marfan's or sickle cell or all these different things. And we know that that genetics or gene expression can be turned around in actually very short amounts of time with proper nutrients, and the removal of the toxins from the environment that they got from birth from their mother.
I would think, a mother that was toxic and malnourished would then create a baby that was.
Well, how do you explain that? I'll start a baby that's born with fetal alcohol syndrome because of the toxins that the mother was bringing in through alcohol and cause the birth defects of the child, should tell you across the board that it is the substances, the mineral deficiencies and the toxicities, whatever synthetic chemicals went into the mother. It's the exact same thing. It doesn't have to be alcohol, right, to cause the problem.
Yeah. So you're either treating the symptom or you're getting to the root, which is malnutrition and toxicity.
It's just too much common sense.
And there's different forms of malnutrition and different forms of toxicity, but those two categories.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Big ones.
So we're essentially saying disease doesn't
Exist. It does not exist. It is just, again, and look, I'm going to give Zach Bush credit, Dr. Zach Bush, where I listened to one of his 30-minute videos where I'd been sitting there for years going, there is no such thing as disease. And then finally I hear him go, so as a chemo research scientist, he's a brilliant guy, say there is no such thing as disease. It's just merely different manifestations of inflammation. As an ulcer on the leg of a diabetic person was his words, and a tumor in another patient are the exact same thing, just expressing in different ways. That's all. And so there is no such thing as disease.
It's a very different paradigm than most people are living in. So
Sure.
Right.
interesting. Thanks for sharing, gentlemen.
Ray, you're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Cell Saviors podcast. To learn more about the Cell Saviors mission or to buy the minerals and probiotics your body needs to thrive, visit cellsaviors.org.
This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making health decisions.